All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. In the past, I've touched on the topic of high performers, being a high performer and working in that environment. And today I really wanted to focus more on it, and I've invited Terry Kirkham to join us on the show to discuss high performers and just to really take a bit of a deep dive into the mind of a high performer. Now, Terry is a business asset valuer, auctioneer, football head coach, and he's seen this from all different angles. He's coached football teams in different states, in different types of teams, but also in his business, which has been running for the last 30 years, Global Business Auctioneers and Valuers. He specializes in dealing with insolvency matters, which can get very, very deep. And he's seen different types of businesses. He's worked with different types of businesses on many different levels, as well as football players. So I'm so excited for this chat. Terry, thank you so much for joining us.
Michael, thank you. It's when I sit back and reflect on that introduction, it's quite true.
Am I right in saying that you've seen all the different, you've seen so many different angles and you've seen so many different types of high performers?
Oh, definitely. I think I started, in the auction and valuation industry in 1986, just before Australia's largest recession hit in 1987, and I worked in an insolvency-based auction room, and very, very quickly, between sort of 16 to 20 years of age, we saw a lot of matters, the Scases of the world, the Alan Bonds of the world, the Jeffrey Edelsons of the world. There's a lot of high-profile matters that the firm that I worked for was involved in, and I got to see a lot of that. Plus, then, a lot of well-known people going through bankruptcy and large companies being shut down. So really, when I think back on my career, the last 35 or 37 years has been an education that, you could never, ever, probably learn at university, I think.
It would be an education, and it would also be again, when you're dealing with so many different types of people, yep, you also get a good grasp of who's doing it well, who's not, or maybe those that do it well, why they do it so well. But for those that haven't really, the word high performer does get thrown around a lot, and there are many different types of definitions. But I guess if you had to try to define or try to create a picture of what a high performer is, whether it's a business person or a sports person, how would you go about that?
Well, I think the biggest thing about the high performer is that it's when you get to the top, that's probably where the difficulties start, and it's how long you can stay at the top. You go to the tennis world and, and you look at the stars of tennis, the Pete Samprases of the world, and, these sorts of guys, they stayed at the top for so long. And in business, I've seen many people get to the top, and, I think I would look at it and say that those people that have remained entrepreneurial and stayed at the top for 20 or 30, 40, 50 years, are certainly at another level. And the people that are working towards that, have a lot of challenges to face moving forward, because it never stays the same. It's we can all say that, we win a football grand final one year and we become professionals in those careers, and you might be only a professional there for 2 years or 5 years or 8 years, but to stay at a top level in business or in sport for 10, 20, 30 years, that's a big difference for me.
That's a good point, because if you think about it, if you look at history, if you look at almost any industry, even like a singer, for example, yep, it's very easy for someone to bring out one great hit, but for someone to do it over a long period of time, like Michael Jackson, for example, it takes a particular skill. And the same with sports. For a sports team to, or for a player to have a good season is great, but to do it over a long period of time, that's a big deal. And I think that's what puts people on the map. And I think that's what people like us look up to. Like even me as a financial advisor, I look up to other advisors that have been doing it for a really long time, that have achieved goals and have helped a lot of people and have done certain things. And I'm assuming you're the same, that, and if you look at, I guess, any hero that a person has, it's someone that has done it over a long period of time.
Yeah, it's true, because as I said, when you sort of look at things, it's we all have to deal in the moment, and the moment is a big thing. I look back on the past, and I've just moved house recently, and pulling things out that if social media was around 10, 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago with my career, I'd be over social media every 5 seconds, because I had business going at 10 million miles an hour. I had a sporting career going at 10 million miles an hour. I had a speaking circuit career going at 10 million miles an hour, and social media wasn't around then. It was how you were in the newspaper or how you were on the radio. And you look at today, social media lasts, really for a long, long time. And I think that everyone now, we deal in the moment, and the moment can change tomorrow. So many things can pop up at you now. There's so many challenges as technology changes. The changes that are around today certainly weren't around 20, 30 years ago, is how quick they can go. So I think now, when we plan our 5-year plan, I remember when I started in business, I was 23. It was always plan in 5 years. So it was always, okay, where I want to head to be in 5 years. I think today you actually have to do that in 2-year blocks now. I don't make any decisions now based on anything unless it's a 2-year block. I certainly don't look forward to where I think things are going to be in 5 years, and I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I like that concept, to be honest, because and I'd like to know if you can just probably expand a little bit on that as well. Mm-hmm. Why do you only look at like a 2-year block, for example, or 5 years?
Yeah. Well, the 2-year block, if you're coming down, if you're in business, and if you sit in front of a real estate agent and you're about to sign a 5-year lease, and you're going to put a 5-year guarantee to that lease, so that means personally you're going to sign have to sign a personal guarantee. Then they're going to want a bond component, which is a fair bit of cash you're going to have to put up, and that ties you in. And the business world now is so fast paced. Staff requirements now change every 5 seconds. It's you've got so many risk factors now to deal with that are unknown to you coming down the track. And the problem is that once you're locked into that 5-year plan of, say, having leases or major commitments that affect you personally, if you can't change and if you can't divert during that period, that can financially harm you greatly. And I've learned in the football world that I can sign a 2-year contract or a 3 or a 5-year contract with a club, but that doesn't mean that the board or a committee is not going to change in that time, and then they change, and again, that's out of your control. So, and you can lose 3 or 4 or 5 games in football as a head coach and be fired. I learnt as a player at 16, I thought I was off overseas to play, and I was going to, make a career out of playing football. And in my first senior game, I damaged my right knee and missed 15, 18 months, then a back and then another knee. And, next thing, my professional sporting career was gone at a drop of a hat. So I think that, today you just have to be so, so diligent on what your plans are. And it's always been the rule of thumb that your 5-year plan is the plan. I think you have the 5-year plan, but realistically, you need to make sure you can set yourself up that you can move left or right, or you can go backwards, or you can expand very quickly. And those 2-year periods are quite vital for me, because in my career, I've been lucky. I've moved in a 2-year period. I've never signed any longer than a 2-year lease. And there's been at least three times in my career I've made big moves during that period that yes, I've lost some money, but I'll tell you what, if I had have been in a position of signing a 5-year lease, my business would have been broke 3 or 4 times. And to be honest with you, that's what happened to my parents' business. They were forced in 1991 to sign a 5-year lease, an extension, and they came off a 3-year lease. And unfortunately, they had to make changes in 1993, and they couldn't get out of the lease, and they lost their house and they lost their business, and that period was very, very distressing, and I had to work through all of that as well. So, that's the learning lessons I've had.
Yeah, I guess so. Really, you're highlighting the importance of having options to be adaptable as circumstances change. Really,
Yeah,
because
yeah, you have to be able to move, and it's the same as having professional people like yourself, advising. Your clients need to make sure they're bouncing off people because there's so much going on. You have your headspace of you got home life and you got business life, and then you got staff, and you've got there's so much going on. But if you don't keep your finger on the pulse as to what you're actually doing within your business, and having the right people around you to make sure that those areas you're very keyed up and clued up on. If you don't have those people, then a lot of people I see in distress are the ones who try and carry all the burden themselves, and that becomes a problem for you as well.
and as far as high quality, high performers are concerned, what qualities would you say? What are some of the qualities that you would say high performers normally have?
Yeah,
Because you've
yeah,
highlighted on one, which is like being able to adapt and being ready to change. You've highlighted also on doing it over a long period of time, being able to stay at the top and not just being like a one song wonder, for example.
yeah. I think that just in my experience, it's been just a dedication to what I'm doing. And when I look at some other personal friends of mine who, in the last 3 or 4 years, have succeeded in their businesses and are currently succeeding extremely well, I sort of put it down to two people. There's two types of people in the world, in my view. There's the employee and the employer, and the employer is the entrepreneurial one, and you've got to have a lot of determination. You need to have a very, very thick skin. You've got to have a supporting mechanism very close to you, so your inner circle being family and advisors and certainly family. And I think that to be a high performer, to get to the top, you have to work hard. You have to train hard. To be in business, you do that. But when you get there, sometimes you might realise that, you know what, I might be number one now, but to move forward for the next few years, I don't need to be number one. I can drop back to number four, reinvent myself, and then then maybe the 5-year plan is to be number one again. I've probably done that 3 times in my 30 years, and I'm currently in a position now where, I haven't aimed to be number one. I've consolidated, and yet financially I'm probably doing better than what I was 8 or 9 years ago when I strived to be number one in my industry. So I think, they're also two, big key qualities that you need to have, and that I would classify as a high performer. And let's face it, you look at the bands and you look at music for sure. Have a look at the bands that are currently touring now the world. You've got the Motley Crues, the Def Leppards, the Rolling Stones has just released a new song. These guys, continue, but what they do is they continue to work hard. And everyone might just see them on stage and think it's easy. I don't think it'd be that easy for those guys whatsoever. There's massive financial risks for them all, and they have to reinvent themselves. And that's probably the best thing that I could say is that a lot of times you have to reinvent yourself when you get to number one, and you might need to take a back step for a few years or change direction, reinvent yourself, come back again, and use your experience to get you there.
And of course, an employee can be a high performer as well. Like it's from the
100%.
career wise.
Yeah, and don't mean that, and don't take that to the offence of anyone thinking, that's it's that those two types of people. That is a fact, though. There is two types of people it's just my view of the world. But there are many, many, many high performers that come under management that is their role because they're focusing on that role. They don't have to focus on running a company. They don't have to focus on the financials. They don't have to focus on a lot of things. There's a lot of high performing people that are unbelievable managers. And again, I know some people managers and business development managers and very, very good skilled people that are excellent in what they do. And again, they all have to work hard. They have to focus. And for those guys to get to the top and be at the top, they need the respect and of the people that are above them. And once you've got that, Ange Postecoglou, perfect example. He was just in an interview talking about his management at Tottenham Hotspurs in England at the moment, and as he said, critical that his relationship with his chairman at every club is based on the respect that they can give him, but he has to earn their respect. And he works extremely hard to earn their respect. They allow him then to go and make decisions, and they back him to make decisions, which then brings success. Now, he doesn't own the football club. He's an employee. Every manager's an employee. I have to work as a head coach in football clubs as an employee at every job, but I have to work hard to get the respect of the supporters and everyone. And so I'm an employee there. And then in my own business world, I'm an employer.
And as a head coach of a football team, your job, or one of your many jobs, is to get the best out of people and
Yes.
to help people do better. And sometimes it's a mindset thing. I mean, one would argue it's 80% of the time a mindset thing. But what I want to ask you is, how can someone work on these particular qualities of being a high performer? Because there could be someone listening to this that, they think they're a high performer, but they want to do better. There are some that don't really feel like they're performing as well as they should be, and they want to be that person, or they want to be the best version of themselves. What is just, again, I'm sure there are hundreds of these things, but what are just some of the main things that you think that someone should really focus on, work on to get there?
We'll start on the second one. The people that, if anyone's out there listening now and you're in a position where you want to strive to get to the next level and you're working away no matter where you're at in that position, it's having the right people around you. When I look back on my career, I didn't really realise that the people that were around me in football and in business, who were much older than me, who gave me the time of day, who I could shake their hand and be around. I look back when I was in my 20s, and there was a number of key people that supported me and backed me. But the thing was, I thrived off them. I made sure that I surrounded myself with them. I wasn't hanging out with my mates and listening to what they had to say about the world. I used these guys as mentors. I only started to talk about the mentor world to me probably in the last 10 years because these guys are now 20 years older than me. I've just turned 53 last week. When I look back now and I look at these guys, they're 60 to 70. But that's who I was surrounding myself with all the time. And those people helped me dramatically. They opened doors. They backed me and supported me. So I would have said that if you're in that position now and you can find the people in your networks who you can look up to, I would suggest that would be a very, very key start. Now, the problem is that, not all of us can afford to go and get business coaches and have paid mentors to be around us. I certainly never never did, and never really thought about that world. However, I've got some friends of mine now who have paid business coaches and life coaches, and they help them dramatically. They tell me all the time. But I've tried that. Even in the last 2 years, I've tried that, and it's very expensive. And I tried it just recently. So I think identifying people that you can go and show plenty of respect to, they'll give you the respect back. And if you can get around those types of people, that'd be a big thing. Now, if you're already there and you think you're doing well and you're booming along, again, your networks are critical, and people that have been there and done it, if you can get around those people that are 5, 10, 15, 20 years with more experience than you, and you can get into their little networks in their groups or become close to them, just from feeding off those people in conversations, in just the way they handle things, in my opinion, is critical. It's like when I sign a 32 or 35-year-old footballer and I bring the 17-year-old and I build a team of average age of 19, 20, 21, 23. I've always had experience with success by making sure that we've got those experienced players and having the young boys and the young players coming through the change rooms, as I did. And I remember when I was 16 in a senior environment, 15 and 16, I still remember to this day every key senior player that was in their 30s by face, by name. And you know what? They still know me as well. So it's the same in the business world. I've got mentors in the business world who are now in their 60s and 70s, liquidators, lawyers. I don't work for them much anymore, But when I see them, if I'm in Melbourne and I see them, it's always acknowledgement and it's always hello and it's a coffee. Those relationships have never, ever changed. And without those relationships, I wouldn't be sitting where I am today.
I like that you brought that up because I've talked about it plenty of times, and I think very recently did an episode on this, but just the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. And I always say, if you surround, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. It's a really famous saying, and it's something I always talk about because it's me personally. I've never been one that's been too embarrassed to ask for help. Whether it's as an advisor, career wise, or just as a human being, if there's something I need help with, like I'm always one to sort of put my pride away and just ask for help. And to be honest with you, most people, when you ask for help, they're not really going to say no. Like unless the person's really too busy. Most of us, unless they get 100 requests a day, most people really appreciate the fact that somebody's gone out of the way and had the guts to say, hey, listen, I really need help with this thing that you do really well. Do you mind giving me 10 minutes of your time, or do you mind helping me out? And even as a financial planner, I talk about this in our profession a lot, but as advisors, we tell clients how important getting advice is. And we value advice. We know it's important, financial advice, but very rarely do we get advice ourselves, whether it's business coaching or becoming a better advisor or just in general, because most people think, okay, they're paying for something that they can probably do themselves. And I think financial advice is probably the same. I talk to clients all the time, potential clients who've never had advice before. And initially they say, look, I've never thought I've needed it. But then after we talk, they're like, oh, wow, this is actually pretty cool. Like there's a lot more to this than I thought. And I just love that you talked about that because as a coach, you probably, I'm singing, I'm speaking to the choir here. I'm preaching to the choir as well. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.
But I think just for the people listening to your podcast, that the main thing about, when we start talking about financials, it's not just about, the money of making money or losing money or investing in it. It's making sure that their structure is well sound as well. And, if people are going into business, they need to make sure that they can talk to people like yourself where their home life is not set up in their business life. And there's so many different areas of financial planning that I see where a lot of inexperienced people, don't have themselves set up with their structures, and accountants, and sometimes a lot of accountants, they do their tax. That's what they focus on. So I think, again, everything we can do now, a lot of what I'm finding is just in my industry, when I grew up, we didn't have internet. I've transitioned through running a business and owning a business from the very basic start of a computer to now having a very prominent online auction business where our auctions are now all online and goes to the world. And you can get a lot of information now by just jumping on your phone, where I think I got my grounding because I actually had to pick up the phone. I would pick up the phone and ring senior valuers of other firms who were 10, 20 years older than me. And if I didn't understand something, I could ring them and I would always get the time of day. Now, I can tell you now in my industry, I've been around, say, 37 years. I don't think I've had a younger valuer or a valuer call me in 10 years from any firm. And today we rely on data. We can get on and look at data, and we can rely on things off the internet. The practical outcomes, though, that doesn't necessarily mean that what you're reading is the true picture of the matter that you're dealing with. So being able to pick up the phone or going to see someone still is a major lesson that we can give our kids, because I see now in younger people, I believe the respect world has changed dramatically. And I think that the kids now, especially, kids at high school and maybe 10 years older, now all rely on data and what they can pick up off the internet. But I still think it's very, very vital that the practical approach to being able to go to people and deal with people directly and meet their mentors and be able to understand things in communication can help people be far more advanced than say the people that can't communicate with people. I think that's very important.
And why do you think a lot of people don't get advice? Do you think maybe they just think everyone's too busy for them? Do
Yeah,
you think
well,
probably it's pride?
I think it's cost. I just know myself. I think that understanding who to go to directly and and be able to understand, who can they can talk to. I think it's very important. Again, this personal relationship. I have personal relationships with my advisors. I just don't talk to them every now and again. I see them. I'll have a coffee with them, and and it may be 2 or 3 times a year, but that personal relationship's been then built over many, 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 many years, and it's just critical that we're not just becoming a society now where I can get on the internet and become my own business advisor and my own, we don't learn a lot. As I said, when you think back now, and even as directors, I look at directors of companies all the time. I've had 4 jobs in today. Perfect example. I've had 4 different jobs in today. I had 5 in last week. Now, these are all businesses across many different landscapes, from cafes to scaffolding business, an engineering business, an earth-moving civil works company. I look at things and I think to myself all the time, when I see the problems that a lot of people are in, where did they get their advice, and how was their advice before they got to this stage? Because you don't learn how to be a company director anymore. You can just go get a company. They don't teach you that. So unless you go to university and you're highly academic in the finance world, well, you're on your own, really, aren't you? You're looking at your money and you're going, okay, I have to pay super, so it just goes into whoever the super fund you get put into, and a lot of people don't even have control over that. So again, I think that you need to make sure that you can build that personal relationship with someone like yourself, and those personal relationships by face to face and understanding and growing with that person over time can help you dramatically. And I look at all facets of my career: the speaking circuits, the sporting circuits, the business circuits, the financial world. All those people I have relationships with. I wouldn't be sitting here today if I didn't have those personal relationships with all those people. I'm sure of it.
Are there any examples you can give as well? Anything that comes to mind, whether it was a team you were coaching or someone that you were dealing with, where it took them having that right person to just for that massive change to occur, for that significant impact on their lives to just happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe something someone can just probably learn from listening to this, because me, I love examples. I steal from examples. I steal ideas from examples. It's the only way we grow.
Yeah, I think the amount of people I've sat in front of now for the past probably 15 years, where that I've had to sit in front of people in business who have just been told they've lost everything, and they've got home life to worry about and all that sort of thing. And there's been a number of cases of people where I still have relationships with them, even though technically I'm there winding them up and taking their business and their assets and selling them. But I've been able to become quite good at managing those situations, and I've seen many people turn it around. And sometimes you just have to sit there practically with people face to face and go, hey, listen, let's just draw some squares. And the biggest thing I can say to anyone going through any form of restructuring, or just even in normal life, though, you can go and write out some squares and put a line down the middle and your positives and negatives. And write your negatives down in different boxes and put your positives down. And all of a sudden you get a good picture of where you're at with things. Because we bottle up so much stuff in our heads. If you think about, what you go through in a day, how many emails you write and the complications you've got, and then, where you are investing and where's your tax and how's life going. You've got the kids and you've got to do the groceries this week, all this sort of stuff. I say to directors now, look, let's go back to the start. When you get up on Monday morning, what's the first thing do you think about? And what's the first thing do you worry about? What's the first thing that you're responsible for that week? And no one ever answers the question correctly. So I put it into a square and I said, well, when you get up Monday morning, the first thing is that your home life is a business. That's before you start. You have to have income and outgoings, and you've got to start worrying about home first, and then you move off into work world or business world and start dealing with your squares there. And when you actually put it all down, it's actually quite complicated. A lot of people don't realise when you put it out of your head onto paper, actually how complicated your day and your week and your months are. No matter if you're a mum, it doesn't matter. There's plenty of mums around that are at home that have to run a household, and if they put it actually down into their squares, there's a lot of stuff that everyone has to do. So I try and look at it that way. And I've sat there with many directors and gone through these squares, and by the time we've had that half an hour conversation, they've got a smile on their face because it gives them some sort of direction in front of them on paper. And I've seen guys, and there's a particular gent, and they owned a very large earth-moving business, and I went to his house. His house had just been emptied. The removalists had taken everything out of the house. I was there to repossess his boat. We had already started repossessing all his trucks and excavators, and there's a lot of gear. And I sort of came quite close to this guy. He was very shaky and, he wasn't in a good way. He was on all sorts of meds and massively depressed and whatever else. And I'd put my arm around him and put my hand on his shoulder and walk him out of the house. And I sort of made him some contacts and some intros into some other people within that industry. And that's now 4 years ago. I helped him set up with another gent that went broke around the same time, and I introduced them both together. I got them into a hotel and said, why don't you boys get together and get started on something yourselves? You've got the contacts. They're both, in their 50s. I received an email on LinkedIn about 4 weeks ago from this particular gentleman, and he's told me that they've just won a couple of major contracts. Thank you very, very much. If it wasn't for those directives and those simple squares, he wouldn't be where he is today.
So really having someone come in from an outside and having the right person in their corner, giving them that direction, just help them sort of just look at things differently and, and have a different approach to things. And that's had a massive impact. I mean, it sounds like something I've seen. It sounds like, I can give examples with clients, similar thing financially, just having someone come in from an outsider's perspective. And and the thing is, like, the more and more we're talking, the more I'm finding a lot of the questions I'm asking, the answer, not that it's the only answer, but it always ends up coming back to having the right person or the right people around you to help you make the right decisions. And
100%.
And that environment that you're in as well.
And 100%. I tell you what, I've just gone through a bit of a life change and relationships and everything just recently. And one of the things I've had to do is, I notice now, like, if I look at Facebook, for an example, and the amount of stuff that keeps coming up about, quotes and all this stuff that comes through social media now, where, this stuff gets into your head and you're being directed by what you're seeing and what you're reading through social media. And I've had to start blocking. And, I must have blocked 20 different sets of quotes in the last week alone of just things that come up through social media that actually distract you. And now I've just turned it off. And since I've done that, I'm back to my own business model and my own plan and my own squares. And it's funny how I'm just purely now focusing on what I need to do every day. And I've removed myself away from all that sort of type of, income that's coming into your head. So again, I think practicality, and I'm back to that word of practicality, is massively important in when you want to go somewhere, and staying away from what's being put in front of you, not by your choice, by what pops up in front of you, is very important. And I think this personal relationship model and this face-to-face communication with the right people around you is critical today as it was 50 years ago.
The other thing I wanted to ask you now, and again, this honestly, I think you can, from both of you can come at this from both different perspectives. One as a business asset valuer, and secondly as a head coach. But what would you say are the biggest mistakes of high performers or people that are trying to succeed in things. And what I just mean by
Yep.
that is,
Yep.
I'm sure you've met people, even you personally, but I'm sure you've met
Yep.
people where they've done something's happened, whether it's a business that's shut down or they've made a decision, the outcome hasn't been great, and it all came back to this one particular decision or this one thing they did wrong, or there's this one thing that if they had changed or that if they had done that one thing differently, things would have turned out positive instead of negative. And it,
Yep.
yeah, is it like again? I'm sure there are several of these, but is there just one that really sticks out of, as something for us to be careful of, for me to be careful of, for those listening to this to be careful of moving forward, whether it's in business or career or relationships or
Yep.
life?
Gut feeling. Without fail, I've had to sit there and think about this many, many times. When I started my business, I took no advice from nobody. I saw what I needed to achieve. I went and got a shelf company, and I started knocking on doors of liquidators because I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I needed to do, and I knew I was good at what I was doing. And so I backed myself in football and in sport. Even when I was younger, I always backed myself. I never had anyone give me anything for free or anyone come in and say, "Oh, you're great at this," and give me an opportunity. The opportunities came through, proving myself to people, and then a door would open, then a door would open. But I've learned over many years now that when I've trusted people and when I've listened to people and I've made decisions based on probably things where my gut feeling sort of went, this is not right. And the amount of times I've kicked myself or I've gone back and said, I knew I was right and that was a bad decision. I would have said that, again, these 5 or 6 mentors, these 5 or 6 or 7 people around me who don't tell you what to do, they guide you and they can give you an opinion or tap you on the shoulder and say, mate, I think you're going the wrong way here. Or, mate, you need to be careful here. And then you make your decision. I think that's always been paramount for me. The thing I was talking about before, like signing long-term leases, and from a business point of view, you'd say, and your advisors will say, mate, you need to expand. You can expand here and you can go for it. People around you will want to follow you. But when it becomes tough and hard, those people will leave you. If you're on your own, they will leave you. You can never guarantee that it's going to continue. And you make those decisions. I sort of put it to my kids. I say, listen, there's 2 parts of a decision. There's one where you're standing at the line and you're going to go and do something. So the next part of that is the action. So, if I decide to take a parcel from yourself, Michael, and you offer me a parcel and it's on the table, I can look at that and go, I want to accept it or I don't. And if my gut feeling says, you know what, I make that action, there's a big risk here. My gut feeling says that's a big risk. That's a risk that can affect me no matter what it is. So I choose not to take that. So I walk away at the line of decision making. When you take the decision and you go and do the action and you know that it's a bad move and your gut feeling's telling you it's a bad move, or that person's not the right person you want to be associating with, or something's going on in your life where you know that the next move's a risk, that's where I would have turned around and said in my life, and from what I've learned, would be the biggest key factor of advice that I'd have for anyone.
I love that. And to be honest, I talk to my clients about this when we talk about investing, when we talk about making decisions, and even me as a business owner, I can relate to that as well, because following my gut has always most of the time worked out, and not following my gut as well has sometimes led to regret.
For sure.
And it's like whether it's a red flag that you sort of just ignore, or whether it's just, I guess, just listening to yourself.
Going back to the red flags, again, going back to my squares of sitting down and looking at the positives and negatives before you make a decision. The positives and negatives of people around you. You can sit, doesn't matter. You can be in your home life, family life, your business life, business partners, employees. You can, that simplicity of sitting down on your own and clearing your head and putting the negatives and positives before you go and make a decision the next day will help you dramatically. But if you're making decisions where and you're sort of juggling it and you're a bit nervous, but look, I'm going to go for it. Where when I make a decision, I go, I'm going for it. I'm not even waiting. Like that ball comes over the top and it's bouncing, and I know I'm going to have to make that tackle, and someone's in my way. But no matter what, that ball cannot go through the line. Boom, I'm gone, and I'll make that and cop the consequences. But if I hesitate because the referee now says, "Oh, if you make that tackle, I'm going to book you and can send you off," and then I hesitate, then the person goes through and scores the goal, and we lose the game. That's that's another easy way I break it down to that. But
that makes sense, and sometimes it's just simplifying things, just literally just sort of stepping back and just looking at it in black and white and be like, okay, well, this is the situation, like what you said, pros and cons, and
well, here's another way. Here's another couple of ways to look at things, and I have to say this to football players. I have a meeting tonight at 7:00 with 60, 70 players who I've never met before. We come to sport today, and I'm sure many people at home are going to, agree with this one, and maybe there's some people who won't. But the fact of the matter is that when we turn up today and we tell our 8, 9 and 10-year-olds or 7-year-olds and 11 and 12-year-olds that when you're playing a competitive sporting game, and there's no winners and losers today, because we don't want the kids who are losing, getting upset because the other kids are winning and they're singing a team song at the end. How far this has gone out of the realm. It's not funny. And I'll give you a couple of different practical points here. But the fact of the matter is, when you go down and play tennis, and I grew up playing tennis as well, and when you're playing against your opponent the other side, there's no not losing today. When you play tennis, you win or you lose. That's a fact. So what, do we play tennis now? We don't keep track of the score. We don't keep the games, and we don't keep the sets. We just go out and hit against each other and go home. In tennis, it's winning or losing. It's competitive, right? So it's the same now as when we go to school. Back in our day, if you borrowed $5 off a kid in the line and that kid didn't pay you back the $5 in 3 or 4 days in the tuck shop, well, you'd go and have a bit of a wrestle with that kid to get your money back. And then when you went up to the principal and the whole story came out, the kid would end up getting your $5 back, and you both would probably get into trouble. Today, you go up and borrow $5 from a kid in the line, and he doesn't give you money back, and you try and get it back from him. You're the one who's going to get expelled.
I remember back in the days as well, if you had $5, if you had $5 in the tuck shop, you're a millionaire as well.
Well, correct. Yeah, it's probably $1 or $2. But again, so now we come into business today, and now we're coming up with different processes and reasons why people shouldn't have to pay people, and the people who need to go and get their money back now legally just can't afford to do it. So we're creating a sort of culture, and as I said, it's the same as in sport. But the fact of the matter is that when we play sport, it's winning and losing, and when we go to work, it's you go to work, you expect to get paid. It's failure and success in business, and it's the same when you're investing money as you are in your role. If you don't know what you're doing and you take a gamble and you invest and you're not well advised and you lose it, well, you lose it. So, and if you make it, you make it. And that's where we sort of sit today. And again, we'll come back to this practicality word of everything being practical. I still think that again, in everything I've learned, everything I've watched, what you do as an individual comes back down to practical reality. And if you can keep that simplicity and keep things practical, you're a good chance to move forward.
No, thanks, Terry. And it's been so good to listen to your insight. And it's, again, I love the fact that you've come at it from two different angles. And can I ask as well, Terry, if anybody wanted to get in contact with you or to follow some of your work after this, what would you say would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, certainly. Well, the consulting valuation website is just globalvaluers.com.au. And that's probably the best bet. And then, certainly my email address is terry@globalvaluers.com.au. And look, I'm always available. The one thing that I've decided now in my time is to spend time and make time available where I can. If people reach out to me for whatever reason, and again, my contact base is very, very large. I've built a very, very large contact base over the years, and And if I can't help someone, I'm more than sure that I can send someone in the right direction. And then obviously too, it's how Michael, you and I have met, and it's how I'm on your show today. And again, it's through this referral networks of contacts. And again, if we can all help each other, and sometimes, it's not about referring people and having financial gain, or it's not about referring someone and saying, oh, that's that I can't refer someone because it's got no benefit to me. I think that's, if anyone has that attitude, again, they're very short-sighted on what they're doing, and over the long term, I don't think it's going to help them. Where with me, I've learnt that if I can help somebody in the community for any reason, just by hearing their story or hearing what they, would like to try and find out, and if I can put someone into the right area that can help them, then that's only going to benefit me down the track, because they'll tell 10 other people, hey, listen, I spoke to this guy, or I heard I'm on your show, for an example, and that's going to benefit us as we move forward. And I think that, that's, again, a very, very positive move.
Well said, Terry. And also, I like to finish all my episodes off with a dad joke as well.
Go for it.
And actually, this one's a pretty good one. But what's worse than raining cats and dogs? Hailing taxis.
Aha, very, very good. Well, you're probably right there.
I think it's pretty good. Like, I mean, honestly, I'll be honest with you, compared to my other dad jokes, this one's actually up there. So it's not bad, hailing taxis. Anyway,
I still remember a joke from grade 2. It's the only one I've ever remembered. And, what happened to the Irish jellyfish?
What happened?
It's set. By the way, I've known that since grade 2. It's the only one I can ever remember.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. No, thank you, Terry. Terry, again, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I've learned a bit, and I'm going to, in the description of this episode, I'm going to drop in your website if people want people to contact you and learn more about what you do. And I can't wait to continue following your journey as a business owner and as a head coach as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm at Yeronga Eagles Football Club this season, which is an El Salvadorian community-backed club. There's players there from the different parts of Central and South America, and some Australian players as well, but certainly a different culture for me, and that's in Brisbane. So I've dropped down from the professional leagues to the more of an amateur league this year, and to help the community football club sort of grow to become a semi-professional club in the future. So Yeronga Eagles Football Club, if you want to reach out and come down and watch some good football, please, if you're in Brisbane, come down and check us out.
Done. I'll make sure I come and visit, actually.
That'd be great.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Terry.
No worries. Thank you, Michael. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.